And hello, everybody, and welcome to First and 10 with Keith Harrington. I'm your host, Keith Harrington, here on NYVT Media Sports, our weekly look back and look ahead, a preview and review of recent high school football games and games coming up in the near future. And we are in week number 5, and it's hard to believe, everybody, that the season is flying by so fast. We are already in week number 5, the calendar just turning to October, and it won't be very long before we'll be having sectional playoff games for the teams that qualify and crossover games for the teams who do not qualify are just around the corner. But first, let's look back at last week's games. And a game we broadcasted here on NYVT Media Sports, Schuylerville defeating Granville Whitehall 41-16 over at Whitehall's Ambrose Gilligan Field. The Black Horses coming in as the defending state champions in Class C. They were 3-0 coming in on the season and really had yet to be all that challenged. And they have 18 starters back, 9 on each side of the ball. So you know they were going to be a tough opponent for Granville Whitehall, but Granville Whitehall with a good accounting for themselves, hanging in for the third quarter anyways, and then Schuylerville pulling away for the win. The Black Horses led 27-0 at halftime, and then Granville Whitehall scored 16 unanswered points coming out of the gate in the third quarter. They took the opening kickoff and a long touchdown run by C.J. Monty and a two-point conversion pass made it 27 rather to 8, and then they came back and got a muffed kick. They recovered a muffed kick. They get on the field, get a short touchdown run from Monty, the conversion run from Monty, and suddenly it was a 27-16 game. On the first touchdown, it was Finn McLaughlin to Jackson McClellan with the two-point conversion pass. And all of a sudden, we had ourselves a ball game here, 27-16 in the third quarter. But 2 touchdowns by Schuylerville put the game away, and they go on to win it by a score of 41-16. And our Lake Champlain Fuel player of the game was Ernie DaCosta for Schuylerville. DaCosta had 2 touchdown runs. He caught a touchdown pass from Ben Van Vetten. So a 3-touchdown game for DaCosta for Schuylerville. Van Vetten, Montgomery, and Blake Cum also had scoring runs for the Black Horses. DaCosta and Montgomery combined for 184 yards on the ground. C.J. Monty had 2 touchdowns. He was the leading ball carrier for either side as he rushed for 218 yards on 29 carries for GW. Schuylerville now 4-0 on the season. Granville Whitehall is 2-2, and Granville Whitehall was supposed to play Corinth this week. They now have a bye. They have a week off to rest up, lick their wounds a little bit, as they were supposed to play Corinth Hadley Luzerne, but now Corinth and Hadley Luzerne playing 8-man football. So that game became a bye week as they didn't find anybody to fill that date. On Saturday afternoon, NYVT Media Sports was at Dean Houghton Field in Poultney, Vermont, as we made our trip across the Vermont-New York border for the first time. The Blue Devils hosted Milton in the annual Chili Bowl game. And the Chili Bowl comes from the fact that it is the Poultney Rotary Club chili cook-off that weekend. And after the game is over, the Rotary Club members come out and present the Chili Bowl Cup to the winner. And this year it was the Milton Yellow Jackets as they came away with a hard-fought 14-6 win. Poultney struck first, though, as they came out and took a 6-0 lead on a touchdown run by Oliver Shanholzer in the first quarter. The extra point kick was no good. It was 6-0 Poultney. The Yellow Jackets took the lead before halftime as they had a short touchdown pass and catch, and it was Talon Prevetto on the catch and run for the touchdown for Milton. And the 2-point conversion run was run in by Prevetto on a direct snap to him, and they led 8-6 at the half, and there was no scoring until the final 3 minutes of the game, and then it was Prevetto with a touchdown run, and that increased to at that time 14-6, but Poultney stayed in the game by getting a stop on the conversion. It was still a 1-score ball game, but the Blue Devils could not go down and get the touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie the game. So Milton hangs on for the 14-6 win. Our Lake Champlain Coal Company player of the game was Talon Prevetto of Milton as he had a touchdown catch, a touchdown run, and ran for a 2-point conversion to account for all 14 points for the Yellow Jackets. Milton is 1-3 on the season. Poultney is 0-4. Cambridge Salem bounced back from a loss to Greenwich. They rolled past the Tigers of Hudson Falls 61-7. It was Colin Rowland scoring 3 touchdowns, and he also returned a punt for a score for Cambridge Salem. It was Jackson Rowland and Sawyer Saddlemeyer each rushing for 2 touchdowns. Stephen Yakubik tossed a 39-yard touchdown pass to Colin Rowland. Abe Cushing and Preston Peabody also scored touchdowns for Cambridge Salem as they moved to 3-1 on the season with a 61-7 win over Hudson Falls. Ravenna Queens Selkirk suffered their first loss of the season after 3 straight wins. They fell to Lansingburg at home, 14-12. For Lansingburg, Anari Fredericks ran for both touchdowns. He also rushed for a game-high 195 yards to lead the Knights. Mason Cartner and Joseph Tuzin scored touchdowns for the Ravens. Cartner rushed for 91 yards on the ground and also passed for 178 yards for RCS. Johnny Jones also rushed for 51 yards for Ravenna Queens Selkirk. And now, as I said, they move to 3-1 on the season after starting the season with 3 straight wins. Greenwich stayed unbeaten with a 57-0 win over Warrensburg Lake George, the first loss of the season for the Wolverines. Morrisville Eaton topped Corinth Hadley Luzerne 68-6 in 8-man football. That's the first loss of the season for the Mountaineers. Stillwater Saratoga Catholic shut out Voorheesville 41-0. Cobleskill Richmondville rolled over Johnstown 38-6. The Bulldogs remain unbeaten. They are 4-0 on the season. We'll see them in a few weeks here on NYVT Media Sports. The Hudson Bluehawks defeated Broad Alban Perth 48-7. It was Fonda Fultonville defeating Coxsackie Athens 48-14. Rensselaer Loudonville Christian fell to Canajoharie Fort Plain 54-6. And it was Shelma over Ichabod Crane 42-6. That was a look at the scoreboard from last week. When I come back, we'll look at this week's game that we're going to be having live here on NYVT Media Sports. We will preview Green Tech at Ravenna Queens Selkirk and take a look at the rest of this week's schedule. That's when we come back on First and 10 with Keith Harrington on NYVT Media Sports. And welcome back to First and 10 with Keith Harrington here on NYVT Media Sports, our weekly high school football review and preview show. And looking forward to what's coming up this weekend. We'll be on the road once again here for NYVT Media Sports, as we'll be at Ravenna Queens Selkirk for the second time this year. Looking forward to returning to RCS, as we had a warm welcome there last time and had a great time with the fans last time we were at RCS. Looking forward to it once again. And this time it'll be Ravenna Queens Selkirk taking on the Eagles of Green Tech. And RCS comes in with a record of 3-1. As I had mentioned earlier in the show, falling for the first time last week when they lost to Lansingburg at home. Green Tech comes in 2-2. And on paper, this might look like a game that RCS should win handily. But if you look at common opponents, the scores against common opponents have been pretty similar. For example, Ravenna Queens Selkirk 14-12 against Lansingburg. And Green Tech, I think it was a 10-8 game. Their scores against Gloversville were fairly compatible. So, it might be a better game on the field than it appears on the paper, but we'll have to wait and see come Friday night. RCS is led by quarterback Mason Cartner. Cartner with 5 touchdown runs. He's a dual threat quarterback for RCS. He has 2 touchdown passes to go along with his 5 runs rushing. Running back Johnny Jones has 4 touchdowns on the season. Joseph Tuzin has found the end zone twice. And JT Foy has caught both of the touchdown passes that have been thrown by Mason Cartner this season. The big one, the game winner against Averill Park in a game a couple of weeks ago, late in the game, a game that we were on the scene for with NYVT Media Sports for that one. Defensively, Tyler Haslam, who was a Lake Champlain Coal Company player of the game a couple of weeks ago for us. He leads the Ravens in tackles. He averages nearly 6 tackles a contest. Lucius Ferranda has 2.5 sacks on the season to lead RCS in sacks. Looking over at the other side for Green Tech now, sophomore running back Tariq Inman leads the Eagles with 5 touchdowns on the season. Quarterback Anthony Brown has thrown for 2 TD passes for Green Tech. And also, Stefano Sylvain averages 132 yards a game on the ground. Inman averages 131 yards on the ground. So Green Tech can run the rock people, and that's something Ravenna Queeman Selkirk is going to have to try to shut down. Sylvain also leads Green Tech defensively as he averages 9.5 tackles per game. So that is a little preview for the game we'll have coming up. We'll be in Ravenna for Ravenna Queeman Selkirk versus Green Tech at RCS High School, the Ravens and the Eagles, and we'll have that Friday night at 7 o'clock right here on NYVT Media Sports. I'll have the play-by-play call on that one. Other games on the schedule this weekend, Friday night, big game, Hoosick Falls Tamarack is at Schuylerville. Black Horses trying to remain unbeaten on the season in that one. Hoosick Falls Tamarack could provide a threat for them. It's a team that's off to a pretty good start this year. Hudson Falls is at Warrensburg Lake George. Coach John Arian's Wolverines will look to bounce back after a loss to Greenwich. Rensselaer Loudonville Christian has the tall order of having to travel to Greenwich to take on the unbeaten Witches. Stillwater Spa Catholic is at Kenajahari Fort Plain. In 8-man football, Corinth Hadley Luzerne is at Hoosick Falls. Ichabod Crane and Averill Park will meet. Ichabod Crane looking to bounce back to that loss to Shelmont, and it'll be a tough game against Averill Park. Cobleskill Richmondville looks to remain perfect on the road at Hudson. We'll see if the Blue Hawks can give the Bulldogs any kind of a challenge. And Fonda Fultonville is on the road at Coxsackie Athens. On Saturday, it is Voorheesville at Cambridge Salem, the only game for our local teams that we cover on the ledger for Saturday. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of First and 10 with Keith Harrington here on NYVT Media Sports. Do not forget, we'll be at Ravenna Queeman Selkirk tomorrow evening, Friday evening, as we get ready to have that big game on the air, live stream of that game, as it's the Ravens of RCS hosting the Eagles of Green Tech. And we'll be on the air with kickoff of that game with yours truly on the play-by-play at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening here on NYVT Media Sports. We look forward to a return trip and seeing everybody down at RCS once again, and it should be a good football game. That is going to do it for this week's edition of First and 10. I'm your host, Keith Harrington. We'll see you next time on NYVT Media Sports.